Yeah, exactly. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So I just want to say that a change in tone in the legislature doesn't change the policy direction of the government. It's the policies that have people upset as much as the tone in the legislature. All of the $1.3 billion in new funding announced today isn't new funding. It's actually just reversing cuts that we saw in the spring budget. And the big question that we need to ask is this government being honest with us about the budget deficit? First, they told us it was a $15 billion deficit. Then we learned it was a $7.4 billion deficit. Now they tell us the deficit's going to go up by another $1.6 billion next year. Is that accurate or not? And is that inflated? Is it an inflated budget deficit number that's actually just being used to justify cuts? And believe me, there are some significant cuts in the fall economic statement. First of all, funding for healthcare, education, and social services is not going up by the rate of inflation, which in a sense is a cut. Secondly, we are facing a housing crisis in Ontario right now. I hear about the lack of affordability wherever I go in this province, yet the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing budget is going to be cut by $368 million next year. I want to know what this government has against farmers. Why are they cutting $130 million out of the agricultural, food, and rural affairs budget next year? And what does this government have against students? Cutting $670 million from student aid next year alone at a time when we need to be investing in students so we can be competitive in the 21st century economy. All of these cuts, and the government fails to even mention the Liberals' unfair hydro plan, which represents $4.2 billion of the $7.4 billion budget deficit. A plan that makes Ontario the only jurisdiction in North America to directly subsidize electricity prices, and a plan that disproportionately benefits the wealthy in our society. But the thing about the fall economic statement that disappoints me the most is there is no vision in this statement around how Ontario builds a clean and caring economy, how we take advantage of the $26 trillion global economic opportunity that's before us. They talk about an auto strategy in the FES, yet they don't even mention electric or low emission vehicles, even though we know global automakers will invest $255 billion in EV research over the next 5 years, or that annually $355 billion is being invested in clean energy each and every year over the next 5 years. And yet there is nothing in the fall economic statement to talk about how Ontario can be a job creator and create a pathway to prosperity by taking advantage of the fastest growing sector of the global economy. So we have an opportunity. If this government would change direction, we have an opportunity to create jobs, generate prosperity, and leave a livable planet for our children if we embrace the clean and caring economy and tackle the climate crisis at the same time. I believe people deserve better. Our children and grandchildren deserve better. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
What do you think about the climate change impact assessment?
Yeah, well, I've been advocating for a climate change impact assessment, and my fear is that the impact assessment is only going to grow because the government doesn't have any plan to address the climate crisis. I mean, we've been told that the so-called environment plan that they released last year has failed to even launch. Matter of fact, there's not even a mention in the fall economic statement of their signature policy in their environmental plan, which was the $400 million Australia-based plan to seed fund clean tech research. So, my fear is that the impacts of the climate crisis are only going to grow. The costs are only going to escalate because this government is failing to act. Anyone else?
Just on the idea of not knowing the numbers. I mean, how can we fix that? You can wait for the official ministry numbers to come out, but is there a way to actually get to the bottom of that?
So my hope is that the Financial Accountability Officer will be able to release a report as quickly as possible. Because, I mean, in some respects, that's what the Financial Accountability Office is there for, is to actually tell us what is the real story. Because we saw this with the previous Liberal government, and now we're seeing it with the current Conservative government, inflating budget deficit numbers to then either justify cuts or to appear that they've, are ahead of schedule in meeting their targets. Great. Okay, thanks, everyone.